to tune in to our session today. I'm quite excited actually to be hosting this session with Sean and Alex. I think that most of us, if not everybody, is using LLMs right now, be that ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, or what have you, to essentially find out information about absolutely everything, from medical issues to actually getting better at our job, actually. So today, Ishan and Alex are going to walk us through how do you make the most out of LLMs to feature your brand and essentially just show up when they're searching for solutions, right? So Ishan, Alex, welcome to our session today. How are you guys doing?
Absolutely amazing. Thanks for having us, Eddie. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm doing okay. I was telling you I do jujitsu. I just started again after a long hiatus. And yesterday we were doing some crazy half guard, some arm bar thing, and I can't move my neck to the left side. My director of SEO, Ben, he does jujitsu as well. He calls it Batman neck. Just turn like full body.
The Batman neck.
So I'm doing okay.
Well, maybe we should have covered those deficiencies before the
mentally
session.
Sharp, physically not good.
Well, I
but
mean,
I balance out. I'm medium.
It comes
medium
with
level.
age too, right? I think you're pushing a little. I don't know how old you are, but I don't see myself doing anything extraneous that's doing jujitsu. So I hope you feel good at some point.
Yeah, it's going great. It's just a matter of time now. But yes, an age thing, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know how you do it, but good. All right, so good to have you both. I think that we can just kickstart the session today. People will start joining in and trickle in. We have Vlad on the control, so officially welcome you to this session about people gossiping about you with LLMs and how to actually get featured. And today our session is hosted by me, Ameri Casado. I work at Convert, which is a leading A/B testing platform, and I manage the affiliate and technology partnership programs at Convert. We have Ishan Shakant from Chosenly and Alex Birkett from Alex.
Sorry, but you want me to pronounce the company name?
Yes, please.
Omniscient. In Europe, some people say omniscient.
I was about to say omniscient. That's why I called on you.
Yeah.
All right.
And don't ask me to spell it.
No, it's all good. Oh, that's why we have LLMs. So that's great.
Go.
Good. So I see a few people coming in. So yeah, I'm just going to hand it over to you guys. Quick shout out to Vlad, who's at controls for Convert today, moderating the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. We're going to be pulling those into the conversation today. And one last thing before I forget, we do have a little giveaway at the end of the session. So if you stick around, you can actually win a CXL All Access Pass, courtesy of Convert. So stick around, and we're going to do the whole raffle thing. Hopefully my computer doesn't crash and die on me like it did last time. So with that said, I'll give it up to Ishan and Alex to take it over.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks for showing up, folks. Again, I'm Ishan, founder of Chosenly. We are an AI search platform, which means you can we have a lot of data. So today, like I think and Alex, again, has a lot of information on how they've been doing it for their clients, like doing AI search optimization for their clients. So I'd love to just show you what we've seen work. Alex has an amazing framework. I'm really excited to discuss that and then just show some examples of things that we've actually seen work. Right. So maybe we can just start from like just thinking about like why are people thinking about AI search, right? Of course, like you've either seen two things, right? Either in your analytics tool, you're seeing, hey, I'm seeing some clicks, they're growing probably really rapidly. I have no idea why. So, or what can I do about it? And, or like, who should do something about it? Like, and it usually goes to the SEO team, like they're the default team it goes to. It's like, hey, what do I do about this? That's one. Or in your CRM or your sales team comes and says, hey, we're closing a bunch of deals. They're saying they found us on ChatGPT. So, like, can you get more of those? That's one, like, hey, there's a data-driven folks. And then the two is also just as common that, hey, some marketing leader somewhere searches top 10, some like whatever stack you are in, like whatever category you fall under, and they say, hey, why did I not show up? Now it becomes the company's mandate to figure it out, right? So you're in one of those two places. I hope that in today's call, we sort of share a few very actionable things on, hey, how do you show up on LLMs? How do you get recommended by LLMs and just like different pieces of it. So Alex, do you want to just like go straight into the framework you have to show up on LLMs, and then we can just go into the examples, or you can even add a few things there.
Yeah, let's do it. So the thing with AI search and GEO and AEO, and I'm not going to do the dance, we're kind of converging on an acronym, a TLA, three-letter acronym, as we say. The thing is the playbook is still, the dust is still settling. No one knows exactly how all of this is going to work and play out. Things change all the time. I think we've seen a lot of research from the platforms come out around what, citation sources they use, how the underlying models are working and changing. However, that doesn't mean we can sit, on the sidelines and, have analysis paralysis and not do anything. So what we did is we created a three-prong model. Everyone loves 3 and 5-prong models. Never use an even number. That's what I've heard. That is logical, even absent of AI search. Like, this stuff is always going to be good for your brand. It's always going to be good for your content and performance marketing. But it does seem to be playing very effectively into GEO as well. I'm just going to do a really quick kind of model here. I put a bunch of slides in here, but I'm going to skip them and really go through the tactics because we have so much detail to cover. But my model here is effectively, you want to build brand gravity or brand ubiquity. Essentially, you want to have consensus around you being the obvious choice in a given category for a given pain point. Somebody searching for a solution to their problems. You want to be the obvious choice. At a proverbial cocktail party, you ask 10 people, hey, recommend me a book. You want to be what everybody recommends. You want everybody to say the power broker, because then you're going to go read the power broker. And how that differs from classic search is classic search was really based on like one URL, one position. Somebody clicks through. That's a view on your web page. Somebody maybe converts to an ebook or a demo. And then you can kind of track that linearly, right? You control this one piece of real estate within the SERP. You want that to be in position 1 ideally. Next phase, this is what I worked on at HubSpot back in 2018, is surround sound SEO, thinking through the entire SERP as a sort of discovery or shopping phase. Somebody searching for best CRM, best SEO agency, best construction ERP. A lot of the time what they're doing is they're compiling a list to go show their stakeholders pros, cons, features, pricing, etc. And you want to stack accumulations in terms of how many times you're mentioned, right? If you're looking for best experimentation software, Convert's mentioned on 1 site, 2 sites, a review site, Reddit. I almost wanted to Dr. Seuss there for a second, 1 fish, 2 fish. Suddenly you become the obvious choice. And if you're absent from the conversation, you're not even on that comparison list. So surround sound SEO is all about monopolizing the search results pages. LLMs do it for you. And I think that's the model that we're coming at here, is effectively you need to be included in all of these citation sources, ideally, and hopefully control some of them too, be the source material, because then you can inform the messaging. And that's the basis of the model. So the model, as we get through here and skip all these nice slides that I can send as takeaways, be the source, be included in the source, or replace the source. So be the source is the most obvious one, right? You're creating primary source material. It might sound a lot like classic SEO and content marketing, and that's because it is. There are some marginal differences in terms of on page, which Ishan will cover. And then there's differences in terms of the content planning. And I'm going to cover one tactic that we use to find underrated sources of influence that you can create for prompts. Be included in the source is sort of the approximation of backlinks, right? You're looking at what citation sources are influencing the outputs, and you were trying to be mentioned favorably on all of those. Sometimes those are review sites, sometimes those are Reddit, oftentimes those are competitors and or affiliate bloggers, but hatching a strategy to get included on all of those, underrated being a brand that naturally warrants inclusion, right? Just good brand marketing. That's step 2. And then replace the source. Oftentimes, and we'll cover this too, there's sometimes weak citation patterns. Like, there's just not good content that answers the question that your users are asking. And therefore, you can replace that source. And you can leverage third-party platforms, which are heavily represented in AI search tools. Things like YouTube, LinkedIn, social media comes into play here, original research to sort of restructure the conversation that people are having. But you can basically create better source material off page. All right, so framework there. We'll do the be the source. This is my favorite one. It's always the low hanging fruit for me. If you don't have source material, if you don't have content pages on your website that answer user questions that people care about, create that content, right? And it's backed up by the data. This is a SEMrush study of AI search and citations across platforms. They found that a significant portion of ChatGPT citations were basically business and service pages from the businesses themselves, which is great. We can look that up in search platforms. Here's some data from Convert and their visibility, just across a bunch of A/B testing tools, experimentation platforms, queries like that. And you can see visibility there. The cool thing is, though, is you can go in and you can see the citation sources that influence the outputs and the visibility scores there. So on a domain level, this is one of the first things that I look at when I'm auditing a website or a company that we're going to work for, is I look at the makeup of the citation sources. And the interesting thing here is aggregate data will say, oh, Wikipedia is the top citation. Reddit's super impactful. That's an aggregate across all industries, all companies, all prompts. Industry to industry and company to company, it's super variable. So in Convert's case, as you can see, it's heavily represented by companies, by competitors, by Convert themselves. They're number 3 here, so they're influencing a significant portion of the outputs. I've looked at others, actually in mature spaces where this is totally inverted. And at the top, you see Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn, and it's all off page. It's very little sort of corporate blogs or corporate websites. So that's the first pass, really identifying what's making up the citation sources. And then you can go in and see, what types of citations or what pages from your website are currently showing up against those prompts. Something interesting here, I tapped into Converts, the things that are showing up for these prompts. And there's a bunch of different formats. I think we all know at this point that bottom of the funnel content, listicles, comparisons do really well. And that is represented here. You can see a couple alternatives pages. You can see product lists, top 20 A/B testing tools. However, there are what I would call some top of the funnel guides here, full stack experimentation. There are help docs. There are sort of definitional pieces. What is A/B testing versus multivariate versus multi-page testing? So there's a multitude of different formats that do influence the AI search results here as well. And I've got a little list here. This is a lot of information to do in a webinar. Like I said, we can send this as a takeaway. But we found listicles and reviews and comparisons are often at the top of influential sources here. So if you don't have those, create those. Same thing with product pages, and then sort of, let's call them segmented product pages, very specific persona, use case, industry pages. If you think experimentation platform for engineers, for product managers, that's going to tap into some of those self-qualifying prompts, which Ishan, you might talk about there in terms of how to track those prompts. Product pages, listicles, and then documentation, especially for more technical products. You're going to see a lot, I need a CRM that integrates with X, Y, and Z software with their current stack. So having that source material allows ChatGPT and Perplexity to pull from your site and say, yes, HubSpot does integrate with MailChimp or whatever that is. And then a couple other formats here. I find case studies do quite well, oftentimes for our own prompts that we track for Omniscient. It will pull these listicles where we're mentioned, and then it'll tap into our site and actually pull some of our case studies as almost proof points. So then you're kind of informing the messaging and the perception, which is almost like a ChatGPT doing the job of a salesperson, which is really cool. But anyway, these are common formats here. Then I'll walk through a couple examples. We will do a deep dive on the on-page elements. This is for a client we worked with, and you can see here a prompt like, what are some tools that help me integrate Faire and Shopify? Think e-com, retailers, et cetera. You can look into the citation sources, even if you don't have an AI search platform. You can just do this search yourself, incognito mode, right? And see what kind of citations are informing this. And 2 of these are sync-where. So we've got a listicle and a sort of integrations page or a product page, we'll say. And we have the data here. They're actually showing up in citations significantly more often than classic SERPs. So there's a little divergence between, let's say, classic SEO and GEO. They are driving significant revenue and pipeline. And we find that these hyper-specific BOFU pages really pay off well. That's a competitive space. Here's another one for more of an emergent market. So there wasn't a lot of source material among competitors. And we wrote this listicle, the top 5 data contract tools. We have a lot of information about what are data contracts, and we wrote this listicle. And sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's obvious. So immediately upon writing this listicle, we went from like 0% visibility for best tools to implement data contracts to somewhere around 50%, high variance as these AI tools do. But sometimes it's simple, right? This is a tactic I've been working on a little bit recently. So it's sort of how do you plan content in a world where we're not just looking at keywords, but we're looking at kind of longer tail prompts. So something I've been doing is I'll pull through, voice of customer research to figure out what underrated prompts might be that don't map specifically to keywords. I'll then identify the citation sources within a platform and I will export those. So export those URLs to a spreadsheet. And then I pull these into Ahrefs or another bulk URL analyzer. And you can kind of see page by page the different metrics here. You could use an API. You could kind of build a custom tool if you wanted to. You could see some of these have 0 keywords, which is actually very interesting. And some have a lot of keywords. And then you can go in and identify the pages that are influencing prompts in AI. And then you can triangulate those with keywords that rank in classic search and have volume and difficulty metrics. And that helps you kind of converge those two methods for content planning. And like I said, I actually find the pages with no keywords to be maybe even more interesting because they don't show up in classic search. Your competitors are not going to find those via a content gap analysis, but we know they're influencing AI and prompts. So something like this, as an example, has no keywords, but it does influence those prompts significantly.
Alex,
I'll pass this
I
over.
have a little question for you though. You covered something that it was being an audio guy kind of caught my attention. So surround sound SEO, right? And we're talking about building this multiple touch point kind of journey and giving them the answers ahead of their search, right? So they search for one keyword and they get multiple touch points related to that keyword that kind of put together the case for them to build for stakeholders, right? But I am sitting here in my ignorance thinking, okay, so how does a brand actually do this effectively for LLMs? If you have a low domain ranking, or what does domain ranking at all have to do with this? And what have you found during this process related to, okay, so those domain ranking, for example, classic SEO you were mentioning just recently, have to do with being cited by LLMs? Does it have anything to do with it? How do you build this surround sound SEO strategy so that it gets picked up? And how does it relate to, traditional SEO metrics, so to say? Is
Yeah.
there a relationship there?
That's a very hard question to answer in a short time period. So how to
That's
do
why I'm
surround
here.
sound SEO is a very complex question. It really depends on the brand and industry. I worked on it at HubSpot, and HubSpot had such significant advantages because they are extremely well known, especially in a couple dimensions. So CRM and marketing software. And then there were some areas where they were less well known, like CMS, at least when I was there. So we had the advantage of a strong brand, and that helps with leverage and negotiation in terms of like, if there's listicles and you want to get on those listicles, you got to do some sort of outreach. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, hey, can you add us to this list? Sometimes it's, they're an affiliate blogger and their incentive structure is, affiliate programs, and you can make custom deals depending on the value of the website. The first step is figuring out what categories, keywords, and prompts you really care about. And that's kind of customer journey mapping and research, figuring out where the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, where somebody's kind of in the purchase intent stage, where that lies, and stack ranking those. And then, yeah, it really depends what the makeup is. Like there's sometimes where review sites are going to be dominant, and that's not as simple as a simple, pay somebody $1,000 to put you on the top of their list.
Yeah.
Or it might be, right? Capterra, I believe, is pay to play. So you might just have
Yeah,
to pay somebody.
they have a PPC program. Yeah, most of them are incentivized, but yeah, that's another topic that we could get into
Yeah.
another
Well, and now
webinar.
this. Reddit's
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
most influential sources in classic search as well as AI. And that's not an easy nut to crack. Like I think
No.
everybody's kind of racing to figure that out right now. But Reddit is this double-edged sword.
Let's call it a different animal for sure.
It's very hard to crack into, which is one of its value adds. That's probably why it's such a heavily influential source in AI as well as classic search, right? It's harder to game the system. So the tactics are really going to depend, but you just want to hatch a plan where you can kind of saturate whatever surface areas are in the bottom of the funnel, and then use your advantages as a brand that you have. But we'll cover that more in the next section too, and be included in the source.
So back to my original question, I think I loaded up too much. Sorry, Sean, just to see if I could get an answer from you. Does domain ranking have anything to do with ranking on or showing up at LLMs searches?
Could I answer this? Because I have some data to back this up.
Sure.
So because we are a platform company, right? So we have data across a lot of our clients. So we actually mapped out every single citation with their domain authorities. And the short answer is I don't see any patterns here, right? So sure, like there aren't any patterns. Like if I looked at, hey, like how many lower DA sites exist and how many higher DA sites exist, obviously lower sites should have been higher. But then if I then look at, okay, what kind of websites would actually create content that would have ranked anyway, I would assume the distribution to look exactly like this. Right. So I didn't see any pattern whatsoever between what is being picked up by LLMs and DAs. This is actually like all DAs mapped out from 1 to 100. So yeah,
that's good to know, especially for brands that are starting and may not be as strong in the SEO game because of low domain ranking or low backlinks and what have you, that this is still a good content play and a good brand play opportunity for them.
I would say there's actually a significant advantage for those who are challenger brands or startups, given that a single citation on a powerful domain like Reddit or a super influential. Let's look at that top right, that outlier on your chart. If you get a mention on that domain, in relation to your category, that could have an outsized impact as opposed to SEO, which is like time consuming. You have to build up topical and domain authority and rank your own content. So I think there's usually the case.
It's just usually the case, especially when you're starting out with a blog, right, or a website. It's like, how do you build this up? And you don't spend 6-8 months building this up until you can see some results. I think that if you needed an excuse to be in LLMs, that might be the easiest argument to make, right?
I think another very important point to this is with AI search. With SEO, you cared about your website a lot more than in AI search. AI search, you don't really care whether information about you is on your website or a different website, because the place where the thing where you want to show up on is on ChatGPT, on Perplexity, their profile, versus in SEO, you want the traffic to come to your website. So for example, let's say if you show up on Reddit, you show up on LinkedIn, you show up on, let's say, Convert's website or anyone, if you're a challenger brand, new brand, right? You're just as likely to show up in the answer than if the information was on your website. So you could sort of bypass the entire, hey, we'll build a brand, we'll do all of this stuff and directly show up on the sources getting picked up. So I think, the importance of domain authority even reduces a little bit further because of that in AI search.
Thank you, Sean and Alex, for entertaining that question. So I'll let you go on with the program.
Absolutely. Did you want to dive into the listicle on page?
Oh yeah, 100%. Let me quickly show you I'll take a quick step back, show the kind of prompts and stuff that I think we should look at. So by the way, just quickly diving into a couple of things, right? So I think the first one is like, Alex, you already covered this, but if you look at the kind of prompts oh, nice. Alex's dog is obviously stealing the show, right? But but yeah, like if you look at the kind of prompts, and Alex mentioned bottom funnel in the middle, I think we need to stress a little bit more there. But if you search for anything top or middle of the funnel, again, everyone defines it in a different way. Here, I've searched for a 30, 60, 90-day plan for a CMO joining a company. If I wrote that as Chosenly, I would definitely say, hey, guys, if you are a company like this, maybe consider getting Chosenly in month 2 of your plan, right? That's why that was our contract with the internet, that, hey, I create good, useful content, you give me attention, and I sell or build trust in that attention. Here, ChatGPT creates that content, does not mention any companies. So I force ChatGPT to, hey, use web search, use actual sources, and it does that. So it used all of these different URLs to generate its answers. And it still does not, and all of these URLs have recommended themselves as a purchase or as a company to work with. But in the answer, it doesn't really get pulled in. So essentially, top and middle of the funnels searches were not as were lesser important bottom funnel in SEO, but in AI search, it's even lesser important than it was. Just because you need to find searches where a company gets recommended for B2B. So there are only four kinds of searches that I've seen. And Alex, all the searches that you showed were really nice. They fell in these buckets, I think. The four kinds of searches where you really need to focus on are like recommend software like this, recommend agency like this, recommend company like this. What platform fits my job to be done? Help me choose between A and B companies, A and B. Tell me about company C. These are the four kinds of prompts that really matter. Now, in these four, each has a simple and a contextual version. The simple version is very SEO-esque, right? Like, hey, top 5 financial reporting software, top 5 CRO tools, top 5 agencies for whatever, right? So it's very SEO-like. The contextual version is where you might write a lot of stuff in it, right? Like, hey, I'm a CFO at a fintech company. We're based in Europe. We have 7 people in our finance team. We use X as our ERP. I'm looking for a financial reporting software. We budget of Y, recommend the best software for me. Now that is what, so you're adding a lot of context. So we've been calling it contextual search. Now you cannot have a search volume for this, basically, right? Like there cannot, like in SEO, there were search volumes because there is a keyword, a lot of people search for it. Here, this is going to be unique to everyone. And if you just keep going down, right, what platform fits my job to be done? Even this could have a simple or a contextual search, like, hey, can any tools help me reduce my AWS bill? Again, Alex, you shared an example that was exactly like this, right? So, or help me choose between company A and company B, right? Like, so that those could be interesting searches. What makes it even more challenging that it could start with, hey, help me choose between A and B. Then a follow-up search could be, oh, I really care about compliance. And then a follow-up to that could be that, hey, do these have customizable leave policies? Because that's important to me. And that's a single conversation. So again, like what would you even track? What's the visibility on what gets even muckier? And then this entire thing went viral where, everyone tried to get ChatGPT to generate an image of themselves. Um, so, ChatGPT knows a lot about you to be able to draw you out. So if let's say you search for, hey, tell me about Chosenly, it might already know that, hey, you run what your role is at what kind of a company, and then it might take that context into perspective when recommending something. So again, a lot of those visibility and stuff, it does get a little weird. Like, okay, what am I looking at? Visibility for what? Like, there cannot be a list of prompts that you can really track, but then you have to do something, right? So everything that Alex shared, I think those were the simple versions of the prompts. Our approach is very similar to yours, Alex, where we say, okay, let's at least show up on all of these things. Uh, so that would be, and so the model is absolutely perfect. It holds. Um, so love that. One more thing that he showed that was really, really interesting was a list of data points on, hey, like what kind of searches work. The same categories that you showed, Alex, are exactly what we've seen. Like listicles dominate. This is now the data I'm showing you. So SEMrush, all of those have data across industries. Everything I'm showing is pure B2B. So I don't like Chosenly is only meant for B2B companies. So we only have data for B2B companies, right? So listicles, exactly as you showed, listicles, blogs, landing page, this is what dominates. Weirdly, we haven't seen like Reddit or LinkedIn, YouTube, all of these seem like, hey, this would work a lot better, but they've all been less than 0.5% of influence. It could not be, I'm not saying they don't work. Same with Reddit, by the way. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm just saying maybe no one's done it. That's why they didn't show up in the data. But again, just don't take correlation for causation. But in the data today, we don't see Reddit be the top source across 25 or so clients of ours. But that could literally be because no one made content there, right?
Or they haven't figured it out, like to our point earlier on. Yeah.
Yeah. So just because no one's done it, it just means that, right? So just quickly, so I think that's why, Alex, your framework really holds. The first one was like, hey, publishing a bunch of content, right? So I think you showed a few different pieces that, hey, you've done different things. I'll show you we've tried to say, okay, how can you processize it? If I had to spend 3 months creating all the kind of content pieces I can, what would I do? This is an article that takes a month to create, but I'm going to just walk you through the different pieces of it. What does it look like? How can you think about it? It takes all the pieces that Alex, you walked us through, and I'll show you how we made into one cohesive article, right? So just quickly, the reason why you want to spend a month writing a blog, which you've probably never, or I have never done before, is because in SEO, one blog could not get you 10, 20% of the market share. In AI search, it can. If you write a good enough blog, we've seen blogs repeatedly dominate the entire, like 89, like 20%, 10% of the visibility is because, or like of the searches are all referencing the same article. So this is us taking pieces from all the best articles and putting in one place. And I'll show you what that looks like now. The first thing you want to do is you want to sort of say that, hey, like add TLDR sections and make it very, very easy to understand who to pick for what. Like I will keep repeating the chosenly is for B2B companies, and then I would pick other industries for everyone else in the category. But you really need to say that, hey, we are best here, and the best for section gets picked up in two ways in ChatGPT. Either it's going to be picked up in, it literally starts making, if you try to ask ChatGPT, hey, top 10 anything, right? It's going to break it down into, let's say, either like, hey, for this, here are three companies, for this, here are another three companies, for this, here are three companies. Or in the listicle, it's going to mention the for, like this company I'm recommending for this. Those guys recommend it. So you need to just have this at the start. That's like the one thing we found. I'm going to skip through a bunch of these. The second thing that we found that are very interesting is there are these sub industries. Like sure, like geo tools is the industry. There are sub industries that, hey, geo tools for enterprise companies. As an example, you really need to sort of figure out, hey, what features LLMs just love data on. Hey, what kind of features should you consider for what. So we just added this as a second section that, hey, these are the specific features that enterprise companies would need. These are specific features that budget conscious teams would need. And creating these entire tables for every one of these. And we can just keep going, the kind of teams, kind of features, again, like those are the size of teams. Now these are the teams inside a company, like what would a PR team need? What would SEO team need? You can keep going there. And then finally, at the end, you can have a normalisk listicle. The one call out here is make sure you re-share the best for thing here as well. And it should be really short. Don't make it very long. And the second thing is make sure the information density across the blog is really high. Think of it less as writing a blog for humans and more as writing a blog for, like more as writing documentation to read or a research paper to read. That's like another call out. And the last thing for this is just make sure you add a source section, very similar to what you would expect in a research paper. Like, hey, these are all the sources that we reference to write this. Just add this at the end. These kind of blogs is what we've seen take up 10, 15, 20% of the entire search space. Right? So it takes a month to create this.
Interesting.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, it does have like, at least to me, again, being ignorant, it has that pillar page-esque kind of feeling, right? It's
Yeah.
a long page, very comprehensive page covering the
Yes.
most pressing, whatever, what have you,
Yeah.
topics on that. And then I think that calling out that it's not so much about interlinking, so to say, and highlighting and hyperlinking a word for a reference is
Yeah.
more about giving the references, which is, I think, very much in tune with the B2B persona, right? We want to
Yeah.
know where are you pulling this information from. So I think that making it easier for the LLM, it's also kind of that little nugget of wisdom that you're showing up
Yeah.
here, Ishan. Thank you for that. Let's
So
just
just
yeah.
the one quick call out. Once you do this in month one, month two, you can take this, repurpose this a bunch of times into the for enterprise. You can just
Hmm.
make sub listicles out of this now because you've already done the research. And then
Yeah.
you can have like singular, like A versus B pages, like hey, us versus like alternative pages that you do in SEO. And then finally in month three, you can then do a bit of programmatic style content where you do A versus B versus C content. And you've already done all the research in months one and two. So then it should be pretty easy to pull off a 3 month, very heavy sprint We've been doing this for 3 or 4 of our customers. We've been helping them do that. The first article itself starts showing up uh, like within a month or so. Like as hey,
Okay.
it starts climbing. Like okay, it's very obvious that okay, this is now improving visibility. And I think Alex, you showed a lot of examples on creating sub-industry pages. I think this does align with what you said there. That's nice. Yeah.
Thank you for
Awesome.
that color, Ishan. So let's try to move it along. I know this is
Yeah.
a deep and very passionate topic for all of us. So, but I do have to play the timekeeper here.
Yeah.
We are at 10:36 a.m. So, and I know Alex, you have a lot more to share. So
Yeah.
let's try to go through that.
Yeah, let's jump into be included in the source. So, in theory, one idea that I have here, I think in org charts and systems, and I think the GEO necessitates a little bit more cross-functional work. The be the source is more classic SEO content. I would say product marketing is more important. Be included in the source. You're going to want to partner with teams like affiliate, PR, possibly customer marketing, just depending on the source data. So we're thinking off page, right? How do we echo our presence through the web? And one thing you're going to do is like the tools will tell you what citation sources are influencing results, and you can see if your brand is mentioned on them and if they're not mentioned on them. And then you're going to want to filter out for the ones where you're not mentioned and figure out a plan to get mentioned on those. Some of them are going to be competitors. It's going to be a tough time getting on those. Some are going to be affiliate blogs, and some of them are going to be just passionate bloggers like myself. But how can you hatch a plan to get on those? First, you want to figure out the makeup. So this is one for our own industry, best technical SEO agencies. Again, you can just find this in ChatGPT. Significant portion of these are bloggers, competitors, lists. These are editorial. I mean, these can be updated fairly easily. I'm looking at this as more of a classic outreach slash link building slash maybe affiliate play. Relationships work best. Sometimes I just know somebody and I'm like, hey, can you put us on this list? We'll put you on one of ours, right? And then sometimes that works. Sometimes it's an uphill battle and you're not going to know as many people. You're not going to have the industry relationships. But I do believe that the relationship based method is going to be the most effective over time. And then some citation sources are going to be a little bit more difficult to crack. This one's from SEMrush and it is in a directory. Sorry, my dog is just freaking out. He really needs attention right now. Um, so those are going to necessitate, either a paid placement or, triggering a bunch of reviews from your clients. Convert, if you want to pop over there and give us a review on SEMrush's directory, that would be great. And then the isolation of these tactics. What's interesting is case studies in this space are so hard to crack right now because there's so many confounding variables and exogenous variables. One of these is from Convert. I won't tell you which one, but we've got a couple isolated brand mention campaigns here, and they do seem to move the needle. These are actually a cluster of prompts, so it's not just one prompt in isolation. Fairly easy to move the needle on that. These are a cluster of, say, 20 prompts in the same category. You can think of it similar to topic clusters. So the off page is very important. Again, what makes up your industry and your space could differ quite a bit. We do see a lot of editorial lists. We see a lot of review sites. This is where stuff like forums and communities come in, Reddit and Quora. Sometimes in niche spaces, more niche communities around developers or product managers. Sometimes those will show up. Sometimes product pages pop up, and effectively those are impossible to get into. Like you're not going to reach out to your direct competitor who also sells CRM software and be like, hey, can you mention us on a product page? So just ignore those. Doesn't matter. Another interesting play here, though, is if you do have a platform where you have a lot of integrations, you can partner with those companies and kind of build a synergistic play. Because like I mentioned before, like Ishan mentioned before, there's a lot of very personalized queries around like, I need a software that integrates with X, Y, and Z. So those off-page sources are actually going to be highly valuable where maybe your integration partners mention you on those pages too, and you help them fulfill those pages and write that copy. And an emergent tactic here, I haven't seen it show up in most spaces, but I did in one, which is kind of the vibe coding space, right? Lovable and Cursor and all of that stuff. I saw a lot of social, a lot of LinkedIn. I guess Instagram is now indexable, so that may have some factor here. We're not seeing that in B2B, but that's something to look at as well, is how social media may start to play into this as well.
Yeah.
My takeaway here is also there are tactics. Outreach is kind of a slog. I do believe that over time, what you want to do is just build a brand that obviously merits mentioning. It's kind of the fact that, if you're writing a listicle on CRMs, you have to mention Salesforce. Like there's certain obvious things that you have to mention. So this is one of those long games where, over time, maybe, to start the snowball rolling, you do some dedicated targeted outreach, but over time, you really want to be the brand that it would be a foolish mistake to leave you out of that list, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So that's my be included in the source. And I think we had a specific walkthrough. Yeah.
Let me just, I mean, show you like what you shared is exactly what we do as well. I just like, so in this one, I just show the Chosenly platform itself. So let's say if you run the report, right, it automatically categorizes the pages, exactly what you showed Alex here. And then you can sort of see that, hey, this one URL is responsible for 400 different answers versus this one is for 300 and this one is only for one. So if you had to prioritize doing something, I would prioritize getting into this listicle a lot more. So when you said that, hey, there are editorial budgets, right? So, okay, where do I really spend most of my budget on? I would spend I'd be okay spending a lot more on this one versus on this one, for example. Right. So I would be okay doing a lot more effort on the one listicle uh, that gets used a lot more than everything else. This is like one hack that I've seen. Again, yeah, exactly what you saw, the same distribution across all of these, across companies. You cannot get in someone else's Wikipedia. Some things you can, some things you cannot. In terms of the outreach parts, we've seen a couple of things work really well. These are examples of, we literally track our outreach in our Slack. It's a long thread. That's how we've just been doing it for ourselves. We are scrappy at Chosenly. So we've seen, sure, let's say things like outbound emails work well. Like this entire thing that, hey, reached out to you on about this listicle and you paraphrase a little bit. We'd love to be included. Let me know what I could do to make it worth your while. That's the copy that someone in my team has been using that works like a charm. But reaching out on LinkedIn first has been working the best for us. And also, you want to reach out from a female profile versus a male profile, irrespective of how many followers you have. That's another thing that we've seen just work much, much better. And apart from just the outreach and trying to say, hey, can we do can we do an exchange? And hey, can you give us money or can you take some money? The another thing that works really well, which is a little unobvious, is that if it's a junior writer, you can always say that, hey, my CMO or my CEO or my VP of marketing would just give you a recommendation on your LinkedIn profile. Or that was an idea not that we had, but then that someone asked for us for $800 and he said, hey, if you just give me a recommendation, I'll put you anyway. So could be a little weird to give people recommendations who you don't really wouldn't recommend, but if it's saving you $800, that's a call you'll have to make that, hey, do you really want to do that? But yeah, you can sort of figure out the takeaways that you can find very creative ways to barter. It's not just money and link exchanges. You could find this, you could say, hey, I'll give you a DA80 backlink in exchange. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Hey, my domain, like Chosenly is a new website, it's a new company. So, hey, my DA might not be enough, but I'll give you a DA80 link instead. So, yeah, those are a few things we've seen work. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, you can get creative with the tactics too. Send champagne, I don't know, a cameo, have Ice-T
Yep.
do a little video for you. I don't know. It could be fun. The last one is the replace the source, and this one confuses people a little bit. What I mean here is that there's no law of gravity that says that the citation sources that currently exist and influence the outputs will always be them. So the goal here is to seed the broader web and the ecosystem with your brand, mentions favorably, et cetera, and to sort of re-architect the conversation around your point of view in the industry. And this is really leveraging off-page powerful platforms. This is just AI overviews. Again, SEMrush's data, it's from a couple months ago. This stuff changes all the time, but their top cited domains were Quora, Reddit, LinkedIn, YouTube, all massive third-party platforms that rely heavily on user-generated content. And then you can see obviously very large websites like New York Times and Healthline, Bankrate, et cetera, Forbes. So here, what you're trying to do is probably, let's say, partner with the brand team, digital PR, and really get that story out into the broader web. Sometimes you can leverage user-generated content and community. If you have a very passionate community of evangelists, product evangelists, a couple tactics here that I've seen work. YouTube is I believe highly underrated, especially for AI mode, AI overviews. There's obviously a direct connection with Google ecosystem. And in B2B, video has always been underrated. There's a slightly higher barrier to entry to creating video content, and videos are showing up quite a bit in the outputs, but then also in the citation data. Like I mentioned, that one vibe coding one, YouTube is like, I think, the second citation domain. So really important there. Depends on the vertical. This one's for a no code, let's say low code, no code app builder. Somebody job to be done, right? I want to build a restaurant app without coding and kind of look into the citations here and see that it's actually pulling a direct video here. The cool thing is all of these platforms act as their own search engines, discovery platforms. So even absent of AI, it's still valuable to be on YouTube writing tutorials about how to build restaurant apps featuring your app, right? This is product-led content in a nutshell. The other thing that I think is underrated and highly valuable is original research. Original research is amazing for a ton of different reasons, especially in emergent categories, spaces where there's no consensus. GEO is a huge example of this, right? Like nobody really knows what's going on. So like the more research that comes to market, people flock to it, journalists flock to it, marketers love to eat it up. And the cool thing is that you can distribute and repurpose and syndicate in so many different places. So you create a sort of POV, a data-backed narrative around your space and your product and how it fits into that, and then you can distribute that in multiple different places. I mean, I think one of the key things you can do here is partner with a distribution platform like Stacker, to get you in sort of legacy media, which is getting picked up quite a bit, increases your brand mentions. And we do see this influencing some results more on the top, middle of the funnel. But it does inform the sort of dialogue as to how somebody would come in to find a product, in this case, like Winters, right? Another thing too is I mentioned the be included in the source and really only looked at the citation sources that currently show up. There's a broader web that aren't in the citation sources now, but may actually impact things maybe in the training data or maybe down the line. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll also run a backlink audit and analysis to look at competitor links that show up in association, in co-occurrence with the categories that we want our client or ourselves to be known for. And then we can kind of hatch classic link building campaigns, really targeting, in this case, a competitor of ours and the surrounding text being SaaS. So like SaaS SEO agencies or something like that. And this is really just seeding the broader web with our brand and co-occurrence. So summary here, user-generated content. We've seen actually one of our clients has this passionate community who creates videos on TikTok and YouTube, and that's actually playing really well into AI search. Forums and communities, very hard to crack into. We've mentioned that before. Video generally, original research. And then this sounds hand wavy, but like just great brand marketing is one of the key levers here. It's just do interesting things, conduct interesting campaigns that trigger conversation naturally. And brand awareness is like this emergent variable that also flows into AI engines and mentions across the web, right? So that's one of those just hard to fake. Time is a flat circle. GEO is new, but like, is brand marketing new? Not really. So that's the replace the source. And I think we've got a cool research example. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I will quickly share. So I think I'll not spend a lot of time on this piece. I want to share one last thing before we end. But yeah, this is exactly what you shared right now, Alex. We've been trying to do that. We've taken a lot of our customer data, anonymized it, and we've shared on the internet. And a few cool things we've done with this is each one of these we've sort of said that, hey, every box should be a story in itself. Is traffic growing? What's growing the most? How long would it take for SEO to overtake LLMs? How is the conversion rate compared to? These are all questions and things that you can talk about. You've taken literally viral content and say, hey, does it work? Does DA work? Like all the questions people have. We've just taken that and then we've shared this. A few things that you can also note, like which you can do when you're doing something like this is, for example, response variability. Like if you ask the same question multiple times in ChatGPT, it varies quite a bit. Like about 50% of the times it gives a different answer. It recommends different companies. Now, the reason why I want to give this separate box is because this directly competes against, like, say, hey, SEMrush has a large database of stuff it tracks, but only runs it once. So, but then if it varies by 50%, is it really useful? Now, I'm not saying it's useless, but on sales calls, I can't Use that to say, hey, if someone says they have a lot of data, I can say, hey, but I run data specifically for your company multiple times. So you can literally use research-backed information for sales conversations to then say, hey, this is the reason why we are better than someone else. And that in turn affects uh, how often do you get recommended? Because in a sense, you're trying to solve three problems. One was what should you track? What should you show up for? Two was, hey, do LLMs have information about you? And once they have information about you and your competitors, three, do they recommend you over everyone else? Right? So that's the third problem. Now, to solve the third problem, I'll just like skim over this. When you search for, actually, let me show you the example in ChatGPT. If you search for anything, let's say top 10 AR software, right? This was the company, the kind of company I used to work in earlier. It says a lot of things, right? It's attractive for small businesses. It has specific, it talks about specific features, it talks about specific integrations, it talks about like, hey, these are like specific things it's using to recommend uh, anything, like what integration, specific, like it needs an integration to NetSuite, to Zero. Like these are important things that it's saying, very specific things based on which LMs recommend you. So what the tool does is it picks up all of these things or in specific integration, specific factors based on which any company gets recommended. And it maps out that hey, for different personas, because personas very often get added as context. So based on persona, region, and the criteria, who's the top recommendation here? And you can start seeing patterns that, hey, like for example, Chosenly seemed like it was a not a great, like it was, we didn't have the best support. Like a different competitor of ours that has raised $50 million seemed like they have better support. And you can see the reasoning that ChatGPT gives. The reasoning in our case was, hey, they are better support because they've raised 50 million, so they must have the resources to give good support. It's not bad reasoning, but it's not the best reason to say someone has best support. So what we did is like we saw, okay, what is the specific thing, which URLs is it being pulled, this information being pulled from? What does it know about us? What does it know about our competitors? And then based on that, all we did is we basically went ahead and on the Chosenly website, we actually ended up creating uh, a support page for ourselves. So on Chosenly's website, we just said, hey, we cannot say they've raised 50, we've raised 60 million because we've not. We're looking for funding, by the way, if you know anyone, send them my way. But yeah, like we cannot just say they've raised 50, we've raised 60. We could say that, hey, we give consulting, we give Slack support, we give playbooks and templates as part of what you would call support, and we can give better information. And after we ran this on our own Chosenly dashboard for Chosenly, we could see that, okay, we are now recommended over everyone else for how good our support is. This is again like the last thing I would do. So like the entire thing that Alex said, the three pieces, and finally seeding it with reasons why you should be selected over everyone else. And a lot of that would be covered in the comp listicles and the website content. It would already be a lot of that would already be covered, but then also looking at where you seem weak and making sure you seed the internet with information on the specific things. And this could be PR as well. You could do a PR on anything. So our PR could literally be that, hey, I'm hiring this person, but this renews our dedication to customer support because the industry is so new and it needs I can say whatever I want in a PR. Now if I know that LLMs refer to this particular PR site for information, I can put my PR there, and that becomes a high authority source saying that we are good at a certain thing hence for that criteria we are more highly recommended. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I think
that's the
that
last piece.
that's a really interesting point, and we don't obviously have enough time in a webinar to cover everything, but
Yeah.
I'm increasingly looking at GEO as having two related but discrete objectives. The first one we talked about today being what I call performance. So how do we show up in AI? And that's how do we increase our
Yeah.
visibility in relation to the prompts we care about? And then the second one is almost the next step, which is what our largest companies care the most about. And I'm calling that perception. And that's looking at ChatGPT and Perplexity as almost your first touch point from a sales perspective. It's like ChatGPT is kind of your first salesperson. So how do you cultivate the right messaging that's accurate, echoed across the web? And I think
Yeah.
people are going to start talking a lot more about that, almost like online reputation management.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, by the way. So it's, yeah. But Eddie, I think for time, I'll just hand it back to you if you still, we can take Q&As, we can do anything we have time for. Yeah.
Thank you, Ishan. Alex, I think you had one last quote to
Oh
send us
yeah.
off. Or?
Oh yeah.
I love ending on this one. We
Yeah.
love talking about tactics. You got to make this stuff actionable, but always draw back to the foundations. And I did a webinar with CXL a while back, and I've been repeating this quote ever since. Stefan from CXL basically said, we didn't hack anything. We're not even the biggest online education platform out there. People just kept mentioning us because we've been putting out valuable content for years. So when somebody asks about CRO, growth, or B2B marketing, our name comes up. The training data is filled with people recommending us and telling other people on the internet why we're better than Udemy or whatever and worth the investment. If people don't recommend you, no model will either. So I think ultimately you have to keep that in mind, and that's not to preclude the tactics. The tactics do work, especially as you're starting the journey. But ultimately, you do want to build a great product, a great customer experience, and a brand worth recommending. I look at that as the upstream variable versus some of the downstream tactics we've talked about today.
Thank you, Alex. And definitely value first seems to be the recurring theme in most conversations I'm having with a lot of people across different industries and roles. So think of it as, what do you want people to say about you, and try to, have them say nice things about you and provide value. Seems to be the key to building a brand nowadays, and actually distill some of that value into LLMs. So with that said, we have 4 minutes left. I want to thank you both for such a, what I like about doing these events is that I get to be in class. So class is in session for me. I learned a few tricks and a few things that will help me, and I hope that people in the audience also picked up on a few things that they can put into practice. But if anyone wants to get in touch with Ishan and Alex, Ishan, what's the best way to reach you? You've been showing Chosenly as well. It looks amazing. I haven't been able to get into it, but how can they get in touch with you and Alex as well?
Oh, 100%. For me, I think LinkedIn is the easiest way to reach out to me. Just find Ishan Shakunt on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, just say hi, or just say, hey, found you on the Convert webinar. On the intro message, I'll make sure that we accept it. I respond to everything. I respond to everything. If you have any questions, please send it my way. Very happy to answer anything, share anything, and discuss anything, learn anything from you as well. So yeah, look up to that.
Thanks, Ishan. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, beomniscient.com, which I think we probably spelled on the landing page, so I won't double down there. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I am Alex Birkett, and I am horrible at responding on LinkedIn, so I actually don't recommend DMing me. My email address is really easy to find and to guess. Okay. Just my first name, my domain. So email me. I respond to emails.
And if you can't reach any of the two for whatever reason, come to me and I'll make sure to flag it for them. So before we part ways, thank you again so much for putting all those materials together. I know we have a few deliverables after that we can send to people that sign up for the webinar and get some of that value that you showed today. I have the giveaway of actually a CXL All Access Pass that I can actually do it this time because my computer didn't crap on me. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen and do that right now. I spoke too soon. My computer is too slow. Hold on. What is going on? It's like it doesn't want me to do this thing. Okay, there you go. 1, 2, sharing screen. All right. All right, I'm just going to refresh the screen. It looks like we only have 2 people. So it's going to be a 50-50, Roy, Roy and Benjamin. So we're just going to get it going. All right, 50-50. This is it. Oh, is it Roy? Yeah, Roy. You got an all access pass for CXL. Right in the nick of time. Please reach out to Vlad or myself on LinkedIn to get your license redeemed. There you go. No problem, Roy. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around. And with that, we can call it quits. Thank you, Sean and Alex, for this amazing event. Make sure to tune in. And if you have any questions and you are spreading the word about experimentation, please reach out to me. I'd like to talk to you so that you can join our ambassador program. This was Eddie at Convert, a leading A/B testing tool. Good to see you all. Oh, Vlad wants to be a host. I don't really know how to do that, man. Hold on. That was a perfect ending, Vlad. You killed it for me, man.
You still live?
Yeah, I know. I know we're still live. Yeah, it's part of it, man. Don't get nervous.